Lawrence, I got 100 things to talk about today, and let's jump right into it. One of the first things I want to bring up is, hey, how are you doing? And the other one is St. Albert, where I spent a fair bit of time growing up in northern Alberta. Rupert's Land Institute, which we talk quite a bit about, has sponsored the Metis Memories project. And I saw the picture of it. It's a beautiful mural that's been painted, is available for viewing, and it is a celebration, but also an awareness. And I bring it up because I think it's really important that the conversation does continue, in this case, about residential schools and how its effect on the Indigenous culture has always been. And I think it's important that we don't try to hide things. It still remains in a point of conversation and on the minds of, all citizens to be aware. These are the kind of, situations that happen if we're not conscious, if we're not in the forefront of having that relationship with the government, saying, how are we making our best decisions? So welcome to the program, Lawrence.
Yes, Lisa Cruikshank, who was a guest with us before, was involved in that project, and Billy Joe Grant and all them from Rupert's Land. And, it comes from that Metis Memories. There was a book that was written around residential schools when that came around, from the Métis Nation of Alberta's perspective, and it had elders and all their stories in it. And I guess they're highlighting those stories in a larger mural project. So, we're very excited that it's out there, and people can certainly go over there and take a look at it. And so it's a very interesting, and we know it was part of the Métis Week sort of announcement of that new Métis Memories digital project. So.
Yeah, that's right. That kicked off in November of last year. So fabulous. Lawrence, we've got a ton of things to talk about here. We're going to be talking about some of the local initiatives that are happening and some of the available equipment for our citizens. We're going to be talking about some of the events that are coming up, cyber attacks around the world, convoys that are going across the country. Lots, I think, of wonderful Métis conversation we're going to have today. We will have our little bit of a scam talk and some of the exciting things that have been happening in the world of academia. So let's jump into some of the things, Lawrence, for our listeners. And thank you to all of our listeners out there. Thank you to all of those on LinkedIn who have been sending me such wonderful, glowing accolades towards our program. I thank all of those other listeners who catch us on all of the different medias. But again, for all of you listening out there, Lawrence and I thoroughly appreciate your connection. So Lawrence,
well, that's funny because I never got anything on LinkedIn, and you got everything.
Well, I think I just sent you a smile.
People.
I'll send you a smiley face by the time this is done. Mental health resources. So there's a lot of resources, whether they're some of the physical ones that are happening, but one of the ones I really want to highlight, and again, it's a big shout out to our partners in the Métis community, Rupert's Land Institute, for all of their education. If you go to the albertametis.com, there is funding available for 12 hours of counseling because, folks, this is a difficult time. This is a difficult time between families, within our community, for all of us who are experiencing this new lifestyle we call the pandemic, until we get to endemic and whatever the next demic is. And also, there's Rupert's Land is doing a job fair, and they're hiring coordinators. So there's lots of opportunities. But Lawrence, let's talk a little bit about some of the equipment that's now available.
Yeah, so that is certainly 12 hours from Homewood, and that's available for M&A citizens to access, and we're pretty excited about that. And it's a trying year, and certainly really trying for that person behind you, Dry Saddle, who plays for the Oilers. And I did just notice that Oiler jersey behind you.
I didn't know if you were going to make a comment about it at all, but I'm glad. Yeah, I know he probably needs a little bit of this counseling as well, because I know he's had a number of challenges.
Yes, but hopefully we don't get to another pandemic. Certainly when this becomes an endemic, we just kind of live with it, and maybe mental health is a part of us getting out of our shell a little bit too, you like they said, you might come across this, or the chances are you might come across COVID a little more easier, right? Nowadays, but at least it won't be as heavy if you're vaccinated, right? So
you're right. And, I had a great conversation with somebody recently who had identified, especially in the workplace, it's okay for people to get sick. Our goal is just that not everybody gets sick at once, because that just overwhelms all the resources that are available. But I understand we have a few new resources that are available down here for our citizens.
Yes, M&A's been trying ever since, April 2020 to really, create COVID supports or any type of supports. But, I think right now we're trying to get testing to our rapid tests to our citizens and of course KN95 masks, so they, feel a little more protected too. We have, at the region, we've sort of decided on the supply we had to really limit those supplies to families or kids that they have in school, so they can certainly have test kits at home.
Well, and I think it was one of our earliest podcasts. And folks, if you hit rock bottom and you want to go back and look at some of our older podcasts, because I had a long tenure in the world of occupational health, I did talk about how masks are different. And there is a value in just wearing a mask for that somewhat contact. But providing the K95s, which are a step towards what we would consider better filtering rather than just a surgical mask. I think that those are great steps that we're taking within our community. Now, as like anything else, it's getting them into the hands of people and getting that awareness so that they have an understanding of when to use it. And one of the things that I wanted to throw out there is what's happening in our province right now is the challenges with code reds because of EMS shortages. And that education has to continue with all citizens. And again, Lawrence, our conversation, was listened. Many people outside the Métis community have commented to me that they listen to us. And I apologize because they're stuck listening to us. But by the same token, I celebrate the fact that they have connected with us. And yes, when it comes to the EMS shortages, I think what the province is looking at is not sending EMS to situations where there's non-injuries. And one of them that they're commenting about is, often they'll send a paramedic unit or an ambulance unit to any car crash. Well, if there's nobody injured, maybe they're tying up resources. So, I think that's going to take some time. But again, here we are sharing that conversation about resources.
Yes, certainly, and those first responders that are there really have to do the triage and really understand, where these services should lie. And, hopefully it doesn't eat up too much of those EMS that really should be at the people struggling for air or really, having a hard time with COVID. So.
Yeah, and that's where the resources should be allocated, right? As hard as it is, and I do a big shout out and thank you to all of our EMS providers because they are on that front line where they're tired. All of our nurses are tired. Everybody's tired. And folks, I get it. When you see somebody, a nurse or EMS, you seem like you have to make a comment. If you've got to make a comment, either make it a polite one or don't say anything at all and just accept the service that they're trying to provide. That's the challenge that's happening out there. Mm-hmm. Now, Lawrence, Freedom Convoy. So, the whole vaccinated, unvaccinated thing is really affecting our truckers. And we know that they're part of our supply line. I'm not, I don't profess to have all of the answers, but, if you don't want to be vaccinated, we've often said that's really going to affect your employment. The government has said it's going to affect your employment. Employers have said it's going to affect your employment. And now a lot of these truckers who don't appreciate or don't really want to support any kind of mandates are starting a convoy. Now, maybe that's not environmentally friendly, but I guess they're trying to send a message and they're going to chokehold a lot of the highways. I'm just always still a bit concerned. I'm not too sure what kind of message that sends.
Well, I mean, it is what it is. It's the Freedom Convoy, and certainly they're entitled to their own type of protest and where they're going. But certainly, they have to be certainly mindful that, services, those very key services have to get to individuals if it's, pharmacy related or groceries and all those things. And I'm sure the truckers are kind of mindful of that too. I don't think they're really that stalwart where they're going to stand against us getting our services too. But they definitely want to send their message to government. And, certainly they do have a point and they'll make it.
Yeah, that's true. And, the Truckers Association has said that they don't support this. I think they've stood against it, saying there are better ways in order to do this. And again, I'm not trying to stand on any soapbox to say that I have all of the answers, but, that is a challenging job at this time. And I wish the best for them and that they're being heard. And again, it's just, I guess when you're going to start planning your routes as you're going to make trips, I don't know if Google Maps at this time identifies just where the Freedom Convoy is, because folks, it is going to upset some of your travels.
Yes, and I do believe they're probably in Saskatchewan now, and they're out of Alberta. But they'll probably, by the time this airs, will be in Ottawa and certainly voicing their opinion on Parliament. So we'll see how that goes.
So do you think right now in Saskatchewan, if somebody lets their dog go, they could watch him run away for 3 days?
Well, that's a theory, and then they hit the Rocky Mountains over here.
Hey, having family members who grew up in Saskatchewan and used to share that conversation is right. You could let your animal run away for 3 days because it's so flat.
Yes, that's right. So they never lose dogs over there.
Yeah, that's right. They never lose dogs because they're always easy to find. Let's jump into some other fun conversations. Down in Kingston, and this is for all of our listeners, here's something, again, I learn every week. Lawrence, I learn a little something from you. I try to figure out a way to try and trap you in some kind of a conversation. But it was announced today, modern Métis woman announces that their 2021 and 2022 scholarship recipients, one is from Northern Alberta, and she's studying at NAIT, Tatiana Pelletier, and Hannah Grag from Full Sail University, is mother and member of the Métis Nation of Alberta. They won scholarships. Now, this was just as I was doing a little bit of research, I came across this, and they're getting education scholarships. Folks, here on our show, we don't have, again, access to every awareness. We can encourage you. If you come across things like this, fire it off our way. This is one more opportunity for us to share with listeners. And for all of, for the Métis women listeners out there, look this one up. If you look up modern Métis woman and scholarships, you'll likely come across this. And I think it's a fabulous idea that there's an opportunity for anybody going to school. We talk a lot about Rupert's Land, to explore those opportunities of scholarships.
Yeah, so we have Métis Scholar Awards here in Alberta. I don't know what they're called over in Saskatchewan, unfortunately. But we do certainly have agreements with other provinces to support them, and scholarships are available. That's one of the things that we've had here and accumulated a lot of funds for. So there's hopefully Saskatchewan gets to that place, very successful place of having scholarships and educating and certainly, taking care of their members. So
another one of the things that I wanted to hit on was the Saskatoon Library. I guess as we've got a little bit of our Saskatchewan theme going, this was really nice to read, was that their new library, they wanted to feel like a living room. They wanted to feel comfortable. And in their designs, they're actually installing outside a teepee and a Métis cabin. You and I have talked a fair bit about the Métis cabins and the history and how they've changed a little bit. In fact, we've shot our podcast inside one of them. Folks, again, if you hit rock bottom, make sure you look at some of our past episodes. It's quite a nice one. We're at the Hunt House. But let's talk a little bit about that Métis cabin and that awareness.
Yeah, I heard it's on the inside, and I think any cultural museum should really have its own cabin that they can set up. Certainly has to be Métis style too, so they got to look into that. We built our cabins a little bit different than certainly people out there, and try to make them look sort of that European style with the dovetail joints and all that stuff, and make them strong. We even had 2-story cabins back in those days. So, there's even a dovetail style church, that's near Camrose, right? So people can kind of see where that is, hopefully, on the map. But there's a Red River style Métis church here in Alberta.
There's a nice history of across Canada of the Métis cabins. And, originally, I guess they were developed so that they could also be moved. It seems like a lot of our conversations have been around, if there's anything you can do, it's move the Métis around. It seems like that's just free reign. Hey, listen, why don't you pick up and park yourself on the other side of the street? Well, just tear that cabin down and rebuild it. And I remember seeing some of the images of a 2-story Métis cabin. Lawrence, I want us to build a 2-story Métis outhouse, and I want to use the top story.
Well, who wants top bunk, and at the end of the day, I think the key word is build. The build is a lot of time and effort too,
But no, the trick is going to be, how do I get you into the lower one? Well, I'm on the second story of the Métis outhouse that we just built. But if you look at the dovetailing versus the sort of rounded, sort of the cabin, the round logs as they sort of lap them, that dovetail joint was quite beautiful. And when we were at the hunt house, that was kind of an interesting history about how there were windows, as it were, but originally they were covered in moose hide.
Yeah, deer hide. And to stretch the skin, if you stretch it far enough, you can see through it.
Yeah, it starts to thin as you, I don't know if you keep oiling it and it starts to thin out. But when those cabins are tight, they're wonderful. You have a heater on the inside and you're able to, maintain and live through these cold temperatures, which, and thank you to all of those workers out there that I've seen this last little while who had fought through those minus 40, weather days down here in southern Alberta. And this, thank you to all of those workers who are out there still keeping our economy moving along for all of those cold days all across Canada. At least we're getting a little bit of, reprieve right now. But yeah, it has been a unique time for us as it's been cold. Maybe winter's over, Lawrence. Knock on wood. Folks, you heard it here. Maybe it's over and we could all move on.
Well, now's the time to buy shares in NMAX and all them because everyone's paying their electrical bills this time of year, right? After the big cold spell. So, they're up there.
And Lawrence, I'd like to take that one moment that we want to give to our sponsors. This is the time of the show, folks, where we want to reach back and say thank you to the Métis Nation of Alberta for their sponsorship and their continued cultural awareness and the education and the opportunities and the applications and the citizenships and our development of the Constitution, and for sharing the message for all of our citizens and connecting us for the gathering. Thank you again to the Métis Nation of Alberta. And as well, we need to do a very big shout out to the Steel River Group for their connection, their opportunity for providing our awareness, our allowance to have this conversation on the Squeaky Wheel. They're keeping our team together with Leighton behind the scenes, with you and I and our programming directors and everybody who's a part of our show, as well as the development and the research that goes into each one of our programs. The Steel River Group has been foundational in our province, and they continue to ensure that Indigenous voices are heard and they connect companies. So a big shout out to them. And as well, I always have to say a warm thank you to Mr. Alex Kusteruk, who is the musical provider of the fiddle that fires off our show and occasionally finishes off our show. We've talked to him many numbers of times. He has a wonderful story. Folks, if you want to look him up, Alex Kusteruk. And I think you can email him if you want any more information, alexfiddle@gmail.com. And again, for all of our listeners, you are connecting with us through our thesqueakywheel.ca, as well as emailing us, Lawrence and Ross, one of us, at thesqueakywheel.ca. So again, to all of our sponsors. Lawrence, in BC, 103-year-old lady who happens to be the oldest Métis in the BC registry, I guess would be the term for it, in citizenship. Why, Lawrence, why is it always the ladies
that live a long time?
Yeah.
Well, I think Métis women are very strong individuals. They're very hardy. They last through many winters. Right?
Well, and a lot of them last through a lot of Métis men or a lot of relationships. Yeah.
And Métis politicians, too. So, just outliving everybody.
Yeah, it's all the women out there. But yeah, I thought that was a very nice story. A long history. There's this was a big touch. There was a gentleman who passed away 2 weeks ago who was, I think, 101 years old. One of the oldest surviving Métis veterans. And I apologize, folks. It was just something that I'd come across before I jumped on the show, and I'll look him up and I'll try and share a little bit more information about the, his history and his contribution to our Canadian war effort. And I'd like to, find a little bit more about him.
And those people are probably the ones who probably slept in those cabins that were originally built, with the dirt floors and the deer windows and all that stuff too, right? So, they're it's very sturdy, and I don't think they make people like that anymore, and that's the unfortunate thing.
Well, yeah, I have at least 3 pillows, and if my duvet doesn't have the right kind of weight, I don't know how I'm getting through the night.
Yes, exactly. And your humidifier needs to be working properly, and a bunch of
I
things.
know my dad talks about, growing up, and a lot of the families had dirt floors. They, this was not a normal thing, but that didn't mean they didn't have clean homes, right? This was, you'd probably just wear inside shoes, but, in your bedroom, here's how you would manage it. So it was not necessarily common. And again, just because somebody all of a sudden had a wood floor didn't mean that their houses were clean, right? That may have just protected you from the ground. There were still responsibilities of ensuring that you kept a clean home. But, I think in today's perception, boy, if you didn't have some kind of proper flooring, it would be considered, you're living in the poverty. And I'm not necessarily suggesting that we shouldn't be exploring why these people don't have floors. But at that time, that didn't represent rich or poor. It was what resources were available. Where were you putting your financial resources? And you could still keep your house clean.
Yeah, there was, stone buildings, the old days. There was, just those cabins with the dirt floors, and we really didn't get to foundations and cement and all these building products you see nowadays that, are surrounding you. They didn't have access to that. So drywall.
And, and when, this is sometimes what we miss when we don't continue to share that conversation with our elders. So all you young folks out there, again, I tell the story many times of my journey with my dad and his starting to come to be more aware of his Métis culture as he was coming out of his time in the military. He served his 33 years. He was exploring retirement. He was trying to decide. And from that, I also saw there was a personal responsibility that I wanted to explore. I needed to understand it more. And much like, again, every conversation, and folks, every time you hear it, I am continuing to learn as we go along. Lawrence, the red light's on. Leighton, send off the messages and the fireworks. Lawrence, it's time for our scam. And one of the ones I wanted to bring up that had come up in the news was, this was actually something that was a little different. And at first I needed to understand what the risks were, but this is called brushing. It's a brushing scam. And I think what they're referring to is an individual starts receiving packages in the mail. Now, the intent is that these are not always the most expensive packages. They tend to just be trinkets or knickknacks or what. And at first, the attitude is, well, this must have been mailed to the wrong person. And immediately you log into your account and you go, well, did I order this? Or did I accidentally order this? And often, no, you didn't accidentally order it, but this arrives. Now, these companies want you to open the package. They want you to utilize whatever it is. And generally, because you got it for free, you're almost putting up a good review. Well, this is a good product. I've got it. I've received it. And the more reviews that they get, most of us are trusting. And when we read a positive review, we're interested in buying the product. Well, again, folks, if you're getting something for free, I've said it many times, you are the product. And you may think to yourself, oh, the next thing that shows up at your house, hey, nobody's asking you to give it back. Nobody's asking for you to send it back. There's no expectation. You paid nothing for it. You hand it off. But now all of a sudden you may start to think to yourself, how and why? Well, it's likely that they have a little bit of your personal information. The fact that you are doing a review, the fact that you are providing any information or has been provided online means that they may already be looking at potentially getting more information from any of your sites. So once that information has already been utilized, it's very difficult for you to get out of any of these challenges. Don't post things online that you don't have anything about. Again, I'll say it before, if you're getting something for free, then you are the product. So be very conscientious of that and make sure that you always continue then to change your passwords on any of these kind of online pieces of information, and do the best you can to avoid sharing any confidential information. So that's just a little bit of something that's coming along out there in the world of brushing. this is what they want you to do. They're trying to connect with you. And if you give them more information, you get caught up in it. Lawrence, thanks for letting me share that.
Can they change the name though? I mean, can they really change the name to that? Because brushing to me is like brushing your hair and brushing your teeth.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with you right there. Yeah, why isn't it sort of a give it away package or
give it away scam? Yeah.
Well, we probably can't put scam in the word, but yeah, something like that. Otherwise the tricksters, the threat actors, the fraudsters out there, they're going to figure it out. And Lord knows nowadays you can't use a name or you can't use a country or you can't, otherwise you're going to offend somebody. So you're right. Maybe that's what we should be doing, Lawrence, is just coming up with the proper terminology for scams that we can share with people out there.
Yeah, we should have a Squeaky Wheel dictionary, our own little terms and our own definitions of things, right? Our own slang.
I could only imagine how many people would send in that there is no... We'll get more people saying, I'm not going to buy this product or endorse it than we would for people saying that they have any interest in it. I don't know what our first word would probably be. One more really fun, or actually there's a couple more fun things. In my world, Lawrence, of satellites, information needs to still come down from the satellite to Earth. Now, we in Canada have a constellation of satellites in the sky called RadarSat, and they do monitoring of our ships. They do environmental monitoring of our land and ice flows and such like that. But when the information needs to come back to Earth, there's 3 places, and these are big satellite receiving dishes. We have one in Prince Albert, we have one in Gatineau, and there's one in Inuvik. And that one in Inuvik was something I wasn't aware of. These are in very, very big, large dishes. Is on the inside, there's a number of them, but this one is painted with a beautiful infinity symbol, and there's the references to the Métis fiddle. There's references to landscape. It is, I think there's a Métis Red River card on there. It's absolutely beautiful. I'll try and fire one over to Leighton to have him throw it up here on the show, but look it up, folks. These are the RadarSat ground receiving satellite dishes. I guess would be the term for it. Yeah, the ground satellite receiving areas. But, it's not as easy as you think. But if you look that up into the Google search, you will find it. Yeah, I don't know if I made that any clear.
Maybe we need to get a ladder we need a ladder and go to the other dish sites and paint a Métis flag on there too. Or is it just one? I'm just kidding.
You heard it here first, folks. We need somebody to sponsor us for a ladder. Probably some kind of safety harness as well. And Lawrence and I are going to do our best to start climbing around most satellite dishes. We should probably start with a lot of the satellite dishes just locally, going on to asking people if we could climb onto their own, onto their roofs and just paint their little dishes. Coming up shortly, Lawrence, in the city of Calgary, is the Chinook Blast. So, folks, if you're coming to our beautiful province, if you feel comfortable, if you feel safe, this is more of an outdoor event starting on February 4th to the 27th. I've been down. Beautiful lights throughout all the downtown. There's musicians playing. There's events that are occurring, and they just want to try and create a little bit of that movement and connection around our beautiful city. So make sure you look it up. It's called the Chinook Blast. And the Oilers Flames had a game last week, Lawrence, and that's part of the reason why my Draisaitl shirt is up right now for all of our listeners. It's the bright orange Edmonton Oilers jersey. It has Draisaitl on the back because I was born in Germany. It's a big shout out to him. But yes, we beat our Calgary Flames. And I say that so that our listeners realize that I'm also a Flames fan, but I did grow up a fair bit during the Wayne Gretzky and Messier time. So there is a strong heart.
You know what I actually thought that you did is I thought you climbed onto the ice and grabbed the sweater because they seem to be throwing him on the ice recently. So I thought maybe that's where it came from.
Oh, that's a good shot. You're right. When I watched the game before where the Oilers joked against Florida, who the Flames had beat up 5-1. You're right. When the Oilers lost, they were throwing jerseys. And I don't condone any of those actions, but I do understand the frustration. If you've been an Oilers fan for a long time, you've seen a lot of downs in the last few years. And I guess one of the last things I wanted to close out our conversation about, Lawrence, was puzzle pieces. I don't know if you noticed this, but the last since the pandemic had started and all of a sudden there was a sudden interest in everybody doing puzzles as we're sitting around. Instead of a lot of the puzzles just having normal shapes, they're random shaped pieces of every different type. In fact, I did one that would look like a big ocean view, and some of the pieces were shaped like little sharks. Now, I don't know if you find that interesting or not, but I find it's just one more puzzling thing that I've come across.
Good one.
Yeah. I didn't know if you were going to react, so I appreciated that you did. That's sort of almost a little bit of pity there, but
no, I mean, I pay attention to what you say. I mean, every word. But no, I think that's a very, very interesting puzzle actually to put together.
Would you say that?
I'm sure there's a lot of racy symbols that you could probably use for other pictures, but certainly sharks and oceans kind of fit, definitely.
Yeah, you would say that a lot of my conversation fits together nicely.
Yeah, good one. Yeah.
Lawrence,
the other thing, the other thing I want to mention too, and we did miss talking about, was we were missing a puzzle piece at our mixer, naming yourself.
Yes.
A very successful mixer we had at the Lougheed House, and they were our host. And I just want to make a shout out to certainly Joe Lougheed and Kristen Evenden for helping us put that together. And of course, Lisa Hunt and all them who, sent out those invites. A lot of people were like, well, we didn't advertise. Well, we could only fit a few amount of people in a safe manner. So definitely it was a bit different though, but it was successful.
Folks, I'm already registered for the next one. I've committed my time. Yes, thank you to Mr. Joe Lougheed and Kristen Evenden, again, the CEO of Lougheed House. And you're right, behind the scenes, our team and Lisa Hunt for putting it together. I apologize I wasn't there. I've attended many of our mixers in Lawrence. They are fabulous. They're great for the conversation. They're great for that little bit of gathering. And I do know, we did have this conversation. We can only have so many people at this time during this pandemic where we're all trying to sort it out. But it sounds like it was a great new connection, and I am excited for the next one. So to all of our listeners out there, again, I cannot say thank you enough. Tansi to all of our friends, to all of our Métis families, and to this connection. And, please pay attention to the elders, pay attention to the kids out there. If anybody says that they're having trouble, again, there are resources available. Make sure you look up albertamétis.com. Follow us on our website, thesqueakywheel.ca, and always take the opportunity to connect with Lawrence and I and share any of your feedback or suggestions. We thoroughly appreciate it. From all of us from behind the team, folks, keep the wheel squeaking. The Squeaky Wheel is brought to you by the Squeaky Wheel Company, co-hosted by the President, Lawrence Gervais, MMA Region 3, and the Captain, Ross Memphis Pambert. Our program is broadcast from Calgary, in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We also acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of Treaty 7, Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. You can always reach us for comment about our programming by email at tsw@thesqueakywheel.ca or find us on our website, www.squeakywheel.ca, and our socials. For our comments, it is our focus to recognize all of our First Nations and Indigenous friends, share connection with Métis settlements, and listen to and show respect to our Métis brothers and sisters and families. Here at the Squeaky Wheel, we give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for her time she allows us to be here and share her bounty. From all of us at the Squeaky Wheel, Tansi.